Hey everyone, my name is Travis and welcome to my channel. A while ago I made a video that showed you how to set up Wireguard on pfSense. This video has easily been one of my most popular videos, but it's out of date and I wanted to provide an updated way to use Wireguard on pfSense, as well as show you how with OPNsense, which is a fork of pfSense, which I recommend you look into. I'm not going to get into why I think you should use OPNsense in this video, but if you're considering changing your firewall, I encourage you to at least try OPNsense. Since publishing that video, there was a debacle with Netgate regarding how Wireguard was implemented in that version of pfSense, and to make a long story short, it was poor. Netgate quickly pulled the code and released an update sans Wireguard. Instead, they made Wireguard a package which can be added to your pfSense firewall that can be independently updated from the core OS. Also, when I made that video, I had never used Wireguard before, and my understanding of it was poor to say the least. Since then, I've learned a lot more about Wireguard and have fully implemented it in my home network to replace IPsec tunnels I previously used to link my sites. I only have one IPsec tunnel still, and that's to my parents' network because the Unified Security Gateway does not currently have Wireguard support. So let's jump in how to set this up. These firewalls represent your house and a friend or relative or anywhere else you might want to have a site-to-site connection with. Unlike a remote access VPN, site-to-site means that both networks are connected and you can access resources on both sides. In this lab, we have two desktops on each side, and we want them to be able to talk to each other. But right now, they're unable to. Our firewalls are connected with a makeshift WAN, and that's the private IPs you see right here. Obviously, when you do this in the real world, you'll use public IPs. And I also want to point out that each side has a different internal LAN subnet. This is important. You cannot form a site-to-site if both sides have the same subnet. So if both sides are using 192.168.1.0/24 as an example, one side will need to change the subnet. Another quick thing I want to mention is that I'll be connecting to these firewalls on a different subnet, and that's so I can easily show you the steps and not have to switch between virtual machines. As we configure Wireguard, I'll be doing as much as possible on one system, and there are timecodes in the description so you can jump to where it continues as I'm covering both pfSense and OPNsense in the same guide. So let's go ahead and install Wireguard. So on pfSense to install Wireguard, we're going to go to System and Package Manager. Go to Available Packages and search for Wireguard and install. And this won't take very long. Just like that. Alright, so now I'm going to switch over to OPNsense and we're going to install Wireguard here. So we'll go to System, Firmware, and Plugins, and we'll search for Wireguard and install it. And just like on pfSense, it doesn't take very long. Alright, look at that, it's installed. So I'm going to go back to the lobby here and we'll switch back to pfSense. So now we're going to configure Wireguard and we're starting on pfSense. So we're going to go to VPN and Wireguard. We're going to go to Settings and we're going to enable Wireguard and save. So now we're going to go back to tunnels. We're going to add a tunnel. We can give this a description. I just like to give it what it is, and we'll just call it site to site. We're going to do the listen port, and we're just going to use the Wireguard default of 51820. And this is UDP, so keep that in mind. And then we're going to generate keys. So now we're going to go ahead and just save the tunnel. And we're going to come back to the tunnel and apply our changes. And we're going to go to interface assignments. And you'll see right now we have a new available network port, and that's ton_WG0. So we're going to click on add. And in my case, pfSense automatically called it opt2, but we're going to click on it. And I like to call this what its real name is, so I'm just going to call it WG0, and we're going to enable the interface. Under IPv4 configuration type, we want to set this to static IPv4. We're going to leave all these other settings the same, and this is going to be an important step. We need to pick a subnet that's not in use anywhere else. And this is going to be the subnet that Wireguard communicates on. So in this example, I'm using a 10 dot network. I'm using a 192.168. Actually, I'm using several of those. So I'm going to use 172.16. And I'm going to do .1. And the interface is going to be .1 for, actually I'm going to do .2, just to keep it in line with everything. And we want to set our subnet mask to an appropriate size, but to keep things simple, I'm just going to set it to /24. Right now we're going to leave the gateway blank, and we're going to come back to that. And under reserved networks, make sure that you leave these unchecked and click on save. And go ahead and apply changes. So now we're going to switch over to our firewall rules. So we're just going to go firewall rules, and you'll see that our interface has a tab now. So we'll click on our tab, and we'll click on add. We want pass. We want to make sure that we're on our interface WG0. Address family is IPv4. And for protocol, we're going to go to any. And down here, we're just going to leave these as any. Now, obviously, we are leaving everything open, and this will permit everything to go over the Wireguard tunnel. However, if you want to get more restrictive, you can tune this later, but for just setting things up, I like to make sure that it's set to any so we're not blocking any traffic, and then we can always just come back and retune our firewall rules. So we'll just come down here, click on save, and apply changes. So now we also need to come up with a decision, and that is to figure out which device is going to be the quote-unquote server. So Wireguard doesn't actually have a server peer or server client type of setup. Really, it's peer-to-peer, so either side can be the server and either side can be the client, but it's not really that. But in our instance, what we're going to do is actually figure out which side's going to be the quote-unquote server. Either side can be the server, but ideally you want the side that has either a static IP or the IP doesn't change. If both sides have double NAT or carrier grade NAT or CG NAT as it's called, then you're going to need to set up a hub and spoke topology, and I'll cover that probably in a later video, but I'm not covering it in this one. So for example, my home IP is dynamic, but I've retained the same IP address for over a year. And if I lose the IP, my firewall is offline for a period of time, but typically I don't lose it. I've had the same IP for well over a year. So this would work as a server to a peer that is on carrier grade NAT, for example. And if both sides are stable, either side can be the server. And, you know, again, I want to mention that Wireguard doesn't actually use a server client, but peers. And a peer can be dynamic, which means it will allow any device with the right keys to connect. So in this demo, I'm going to set it up where pfSense is going to be the quote-unquote server. So on the server side, we're going to go to WAN, And we're going to add a new rule. So we want to make sure that the action is pass. We are on our interface WAN. Our address family is going to be IPv4. However, our protocol, we need to set this to UDP. Our source, we want that to be any, but again, you can restrict this down if you know the IP addresses of your WireGuard connection, or your WireGuard quote-unquote clients that are going to be connecting. But I would recommend leaving this set to any. For destination, we're going to set this to WAN address. And our destination port range, this is going to be what we set WireGuard to. So in this example, I'm using the default port, so it's going to be 5180. I'm sorry, 51820. And it's just a single port, and I like to give it a description. And we'll save and apply. So now we're going to switch over to OPNsense, and we're basically going to do the same thing there. So we're going to go to VPN, WireGuard. We want to enable WireGuard. And the terminology in OPNsense is a little bit different than pfSense. So we're going to go to local, and this is really the tunnel. And we're going to click on the add button, and we're going to add a tunnel. So in this case, we're going to give it a name, and in this case, I'm going to call it WG0, and you'll see that the instance is set to 0. Public and private key, we're going to leave these blank. Our listen port, we're going to set that to the same thing as the other side, in this case 51820, and we're going to give the tunnel an address. So in this case, I'm going to do 172.16.1.1. And we're going to give this a /32. We're going to leave nothing selected in peers, and we're going to leave the disabled routes unchecked. And we're going to click on save. And if we go back into here, you'll notice that we have a public and private key. But we're going to copy the public key because we're going to need that. The public key is how WireGuard is going to communicate, and we need that for the other side. So now that we have this set up, I'm going to click on save, and I've copied the key to my keyboard, and we want to hit the apply button here. All right, so now we're going to go to interfaces and assignments, and you're going to see that we have a new interface. In this case, it's called WG0. So we're going to click on the add button, and now we have it, and it's opt2 again on pfSense, or I'm sorry, on OPNsense. So I'm going to click on the interface name. I'm going to enable the interface, and I am going to give it another name called WG0. Again, we want to make sure that block private networks and bogon networks is unchecked for IPv4. We're going to do static IPv4, and we're going to leave all these the same. Under IPv4 address, we are going to put in our tunnel interface IP, which is 172.16.1.1. And this is a /24. And we'll click on save. And then we'll click on apply changes. And then we're going to go to Firewall, Rules. We're going to go to our WG0, and we're going to add a new rule. We're going to make sure it's pass, and our interface is WG0, directions in, IPv4, protocol any, source any, destination port range should be any. Leave everything else the same. Click on save, click on apply. All right, so at this point, we're now going to switch back to pfSense because we're going to set up our peer. So in pfSense, we're going to go to VPN, WireGuard. we are going to select the Peers tab, and we're going to add a peer. We're going to select our site-to-site tunnel, and here's what I was talking about with dynamic endpoints. And if we uncheck this option, we're actually going to set an endpoint, but because pfSense is our server, we're going to actually leave this checked because our remote side is going to be dynamic. For keep alive, we're going to put in 10, and that's the number of seconds that a keep alive packet is sent. And this just keeps the WireGuard tunnel up and running. Public key, we're going to paste in our public key from OPNsense or the other firewall or other WireGuard box on the other side. In this example, we're not using a pre-shared key, but this is another way to ensure some extra security on your WireGuard tunnel. For allowed IPs, we're going to put in the remote side's WireGuard interface and the remote side's LAN subnet. So in this case, we're going to put in 172.16.1.1, and that is going to be /32. And I'll just give it a description, WireGuard 0. We're going to add an allowed IP, and we're going to add 192.168.1.0, and that is a /24 network. Again, I like to give a description, and we're going to save the peer as well as apply. And then we're going to go back to tunnels here, and we're going to click on edit, and I'm going to copy the private key. And now I'm going to jump back over to OPNsense. In OPNsense, I'm going to go to VPN, WireGuard, and this time I'm going to go to endpoints, and we're going to add a new endpoint. In this case, I'm going to give it the name pfSense. We'll just keep it simple. We're going to make sure it's enabled. We're going to paste in our public key. Our shared secret, we're just going to leave blank because we're not using that in this example. Allowed IPs, this is going to be the same thing that we put on the pfSense side. So it's going to be the peers WireGuard interface as well as the remote side's LAN subnet. So in that case, it's 172.16.1.2/32, and we can just hit tab, and then we'll do 192.168.2.0/24. Again, we'll just hit tab. The endpoint address is going to be the IP address of the other side. In our case, it's going to be 2.4. The endpoint port is going to be 51820, and our keep alive is going to be 10. So every 10 seconds, we're sending a keep alive packet. And if you're doing a site-to-site with two OPNsense VPN or two OPNsense firewalls, this is exactly the same. And we'll just click on save and click on apply. So now we're going to switch over to the handshakes, and you'll see that we don't have anything over here yet. Let's switch over to pfSense and look at status. Okay, and you'll see that our handshake is not happened yet. And that is because on OPNsense, we have another step, and we need to go back to our tunnel. And we need to add our peer, which is pfSense, and we'll click on save and apply. And if we go to handshakes, now we have a handshake. And if we go to pfSense, I'll refresh, and now we have a handshake. So now our firewalls are communicating with WireGuard, and WireGuard has formed that handshake, and we're not quite there yet. We're almost there, not quite. Since we're on pfSense, we're going to go ahead and add a route. To do this, we're going to go to System, Routing, and we're going to go to Gateways, and we are going to add a gateway. In this case, we want to set the interface to WG0 and IPv4 family, and we're going to give it our gateway a name, and I will call this GWWG0, and our gateway IP address is going to be the remote side. So in that case, it's going to be 172.16.1.1. We're going to just leave this all the same and click on Save. And we'll click on Apply. So now we're going to go to Static Routes, and we need to add a route for our remote sides network. So we'll click on Add, and we'll add in our destination network, which is going to be 192.168.1.0, and that is a /24. And we're going to set our gateway to GW_WG0, and we'll click on Save. And again, Apply. So now we're going to do the same thing on OPNsense. We're going to go to System, Gateways, Single. We're going to add a new gateway. Again, I'm just calling this GW_WG0. Our interface is going to be WG0. Our IP address is going to be the other side's IP, so 172.16.1.2. And we're going to uncheck Disable Gateway Monitoring and click on Save. And it's complaining. If we click on Far Gateway, it will work. So now we need to apply our changes and go to Routes, Configuration, and we're going to add a new route. The network address is 192.168.1.0 /24, and hit Tab just to make sure. And we're going to select our gateway as GW_WG0, and click on Save and Apply. So now we just need to add the upstream gateway or verify the upstream gateway has applied to both sides. So in this case, we're going to go to Interfaces and our Wireguard interface. We're going to scroll down and we're going to select our gateway and apply. And on pfSense, we're going to go to Interfaces, Wireguard. We're going to select our upstream gateway, save, and apply. So now everything should be working properly once this applies. There we go. All right, so apologies about the weird cut here, but when I was initially recording this and demoing it, desktop 1 over here just like completely lost its network connection for some reason. I rebooted it, I rebooted the firewall, I finally get the network connection back, but desktop 1 won't connect to anything. It wouldn't even connect out to the internet, which was very strange. However, desktop 2 could connect over to the OPNsense side, and it could, ping the firewall, it could pull up the OPNsense interface, but whatever reason, desktop 1 refused to work despite having a network connection. So I shut everything down because it was very late. And now, just this afternoon, I was like, okay, I'm going to get this done. So I fired everything back up. And of course, it starts working. So I was like, okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and give you the end of the demo. So over here on desktop 1, I'm going to open up the terminal. And I'm just going to type in ping 192.168.2.100, which is desktop 2. And you'll see it is pinging. And then to prove that we are going over the WireGuard tunnel, I'm going to do a trace route to 192.168.2.100. And there you go. Gateway, that is our OPNsense. And this 172.16.1.2, that is the WireGuard interface of pfSense. And then there is desktop 2. And I have a web server running on desktop 2, so we can pull up a web page. And there we go. And same thing from desktop 2 going to desktop 1. Ping 192.168.1.100. And it pings. And we'll do a trace route. And there you go. You can see that 2.1 is our pfSense gateway, and then 172.16.1.1 is the WireGuard interface on OPNsense, and 192.168.1.100, that is desktop 1. And because I also have a web server running on there, boom, we are now accessing a web server across our virtual internet to another network. So that is how to set up a WireGuard site-to-site tunnel. I hope you found this interesting and useful. And it really opens up possibilities. If you create a site-to-site with your friend or parent or whoever, you can actually share resources across the internet. You can print to a printer just like you were actually there. You can share your Plex or anything else and use it just like you were actually on the network. So if you liked this tutorial, please go ahead and give a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe as well, so that way you don't miss my next video. And if you didn't like it, well, the thumbs down button doesn't do anything, so you can press it all you want, but it's not going to do anything. So anyways, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.